Yep.
All right, Cyclone fans, welcome to week 2 of the 2025 season. I'm Stacy Street along with my partner Tony Briggs, and we're here for the Coach Shawn Witten Show. Coach Witten, we'll start with kind of a recap of last week's tough loss at Science Hill, a 27-20 loss that looked like early in the game that it could be much worse. And with the lightning delay, you came out and it was a completely different ballgame after that.
I had a chance to kind of catch our breath defensively, make some adjustments. With a minute 40 seconds left in the first quarter, we only had 6 offensive snaps. Just two 3-and-out possessions. Just wasn't able to flip the field. And it's kind of the way the game started was kind of how we wanted to start it. The kicker put us 2 touchbacks, had to go 80 yards on our first 2 drives. Their first 2 possessions, they got the ball midfield. You look at the end of the first quarter, 6 plays to close to almost 30 defensively, and just we really put our defense in a tough situation.
And Science Hill wanted to do a lot of things, but I know they were successful with the running game, sort of. But I want to talk a little bit about the passing. And we talked about the kids earlier tonight. There were a couple of plays where the receivers for the toppers, they had some space between them and the defensive backs. For the first time in a long time, though, you had corners and safeties that were able to close that gap and break up some what looked like pretty good passes from the tall guy.
Well, you give our corners credit. Jack did a great job all night long. They caught one pass from a receiver, on the sideline on a flood play, which we were in pretty good position with. But Jack himself had 3 or 4 pass breakups. Justin didn't get a lot of attempts, but through the night, Stacy, from the receiver position, they only had 2 catches. Everything else came from the tight end, the running back. Now the running backs caught 7 or 8 flare passes or swing passes, and then obviously on the touchdown to number 19, the H-back, a tight end out on one of the early drives. But for the most part, I don't know if I've been a part of a game where you lose a game and receivers only catch 2 passes. I thought we did a phenomenal job. That's what we worked all season on, being better at the corner position. Justin and Jack did a phenomenal job of that. Tucker had a deep ball that he played really well. Zach had a deep ball, he played really well. So just really extremely happy the way that our secondary covered, for the most part.
And we talked about this a little bit with Rhett and Braden. They were talking about play 120, 122, where Justin blows by the safety and is wide open. And what we were talking about is, those guys play defense, and Tony and I, we saw, especially from the second quarter on, it looked like Science Hill's offense consisted mainly of their receivers. When they couldn't catch, their only job was to run the corners off. So you've got guys that are playing defensive back that are running 10 to 20 or longer yards every play, and then flipping over and running the same thing on offense. How good a shape were those?
Well, I tell you really couldn't ask for the plays that we had, the ability to execute. Play 117, play 166. I thought our speed was phenomenal from the receiver position. We had opportunities to make plays down the field. The separation that we had was pretty great all night long, and just the ability to dig deep in so many situations. Not just from the skill standpoint, from linebackers to the defensive line. I mean, I think Braden probably played close to 150 snaps as a center and off defensive lineman. We had 2 offensive linemen go out. Had to bring other guys in. Justice played pretty much a lot of it. Bird played a lot of it. So, really credit those guys for, being on the field and still execute to a high level. I mean, we talk about special teams as well, but still, in the past, as this game's gone along, we've kind of really not had that speed to push the ball vertical and create separation. And I think, the one pass play that Rhett had, they hit Justin in the corner. was a big play for us. Pressure in your face. I told Red it's probably his second best throw he's had in his career. Standing in the pocket, having to make the delivery, 59 in his face, deep corner route was really phenomenal.
Let's talk a little bit about the offense, both before the lightning delay and afterward. We know how important your offense is to have some type of balance, and a good passing game is dependent upon a good running game. Ended up with 27 total yards, I believe, rushing on the night. How do you change that going forward on the rushing part?
Well, on our third possession, we did start getting some runs going. I don't know if that's loosening them up, coming out trying to throw the ball, to try to get a softer front, or, if you come out and try to establish the run, you get them caved in, and, then try to throw it. But, we just got to do a better job of, what we didn't do a good job was staying consistent with the change. We ended up third and longs, couldn't convert, having to put situations where you really got to make tough throws, man to man, whatever it may be. But Science Hill's a tough defense, and when you got an all-state defensive end, sometimes you got to double that guy. It makes it complicated, and we didn't do a good enough job early on to keep them off balanced. Our whole offense is we need movement. Where it's red on the move, where it's misdirection, things like that. We tried to. On the first third down, we tried to H-back middle screen. We almost had it there. We tried a bunch misdirection wiggle play in the first play of the game. Didn't get that. We just didn't convert the simple stuff that we had in the game plan to get us short yardage down in distance. And I think that played a key factor for us. When we came out of lightning, we flipped the field. We had a chance. Once we got a couple first downs and got the midfield, that's when we went with a reverse pass, and we needed to play there. So, the lightning delay, give the guys credit. We faced adversity the first quarter. We made some adjustments. We went out there and we battled our tails off the second quarter. We got ourselves back in the football game. So really tip your hat to our guys for, going in there and making those adjustments, because that's really what the game's about.
One more question, and I'll flip it over to Tony to close my portion of the Science Hill game. As difficult as it was to kind of get in a rhythm on offense, what does it say about your team that you come out of there 27-20 with a real opportunity to win that after being down 14-0?
Well, I just, so proud of our guys, and we played inspired football. The adjustments we made helped us. At times, we had poor tackling and misalignments at times, got us defensively. I think we've preached all summer, the changes that we've had on defense. We didn't just get exactly lined up, and then, we forgot who we were covering at times. We've been working in off season, playing a little bit more man. When we went to man, we lost track of where we got, that's where the H-back slip play got us a little bit some. So, we got to focus a little bit more. When you're in that big setting, Stacy, and you're out there, they can't hear us on the sideline. They got to make the adjustments on their own. So it's a little bit more, I think for us too as well, we put the world on our shoulders to be able to make pressure to make those plays, and we just got to kind of cut loose and try to find a way to relax. I mean, it felt like we were kind of on the edge of our seat on every play, but that's what that game brings to you, especially the first game of the week. I don't know, between us and Science Hill and Maryville, Alcoa, I mean, it's probably the two biggest games in the state, as far as rivalry goes. I mean, every play, was a critical turning point in the game. So, proud of our guys, the way we bounced back, the way we fought. Proud of the number of guys we had play 125 plus snaps. I mean, it was pretty cool to see, and then, the way we fought back was pretty remarkable. It shows us too, Stacy, that on play 117, I remember, and moving on down, how we were able to dig deep in the playbook and come out with some plays and execute those. So that shows you that we're capable of doing a lot of great things this season.
The two things that stood out to me about the whole 127, 128 play series is, one, the lack of penalties. We did not have a whole lot of penalties, and usually when you get tired, when you reach, when you get lazy. And the other thing was the way that this young offensive line, which had a little question mark coming in, then you lose two, then you're having to replace those two sophomores with two more sophomores, how Red actually, there was times Red had plenty of time.
Well, we did. We only gave up 1 sack, and that was towards the end of the game. I thought for the most part, Rhett stood in there and made the throws. We had a couple bonehead offsides plays on defense early that kept the drives going. But for the most part, our pass protection was really good. Our sprint out pass protection was really good. We gave Rhett time on the rollouts. Those guys, it's pretty tough situations to go against. A 3-man front, a lot of blitzing linebackers. 24 is about as good as outside linebacker on face. One-handed interception. And so we put our defense a lot of times early, some tough situations as well. Talking about late in the game, we get a 4th down stop. They miss a field goal. We throw an interception, sudden change back out there. We hold them to a field goal and then we block it. There's just a lot of positives that come out of it. Simply the fact of how hard we play. I think all summer long, we've been so inspired by. We haven't been able to had a coach effort and energy and getting to the ball and those sorts of plays. So a little bit better alignment assignment, a little bit better focus on who I have and run and pass responsibility. And if we can clean those things up, I think we've got a chance to be a really good defense.
Flip it over. There's another play that really stuck out to me and Stacy. Coming right in out of halftime, Will kicks the ball. It's a short line drive kick. Legend hustle play. Just comes from behind, punches the ball out. We get it. We ain't gonna say yes or no, is in or out. But just that right there was the hustle and determination that you've been talking about.
Well, I showed that play Monday when at our team meeting before we took the field was those plays. The special teams plays. We're usually phenomenal in special teams. We had a couple of plays that we like to have back, but when you start talking about the second half, that you have an opportunity to create the energy. You want to win the first 5 minutes. We get a bad kickoff that returns to the other 40-yard line, but Legend has an opportunity to change that. And CJ recovered that. So we had an opportunity that could have been a game changer for us. And so love to point out those things on film that become a difference maker because those plays are huge for us moving forward.
I think you pulled almost every trick.
I don't know if I've been involved in a game where
and they work.
Yeah, and they work. But it's credit to guys that we have like Justin. There's the ability to make those plays, and then moving Justice to tight end. Really helped us there. An H-back blocking there, but his ability. I really thought that 3rd down H-back screen was is so close from needing a big play. And then. You get down into the red zone and where it's tough because they are bigger than us up front. We're able to come away with some pass plays there. So, glad we made that move. That really helped us there. But, Justice is just such a team first player. And, you talk about playing flex receiver, tight end, H-back, will linebacker, then also being able to run the ball. I mean, it's just such a dimension to have that, he became a true X factor for us. He blocked the extra point, blocked the field goal, kick returner as well. So just having a guy like that really stepped up for us huge, became a true difference maker. So those are the things you need. You have to be an unselfish football team. You got to be willing to play for the greater good, and I thought our guys did that. Just the execution on those trick plays worked. And then when we got down in the red zone, you can't walk away with 3 points. We had an opportunity there. But also, an area I like too was the 2-minute situation right before half. We did get in a situation, we threw the tunnel screen to Justin. He got about 24 yards, was able to get down, put the ball where we had somewhat of an attempt to kick a field goal. On a night like we had, Friday night, that's very makeable for a guy like Will.
Yeah, it is, mate. And final question on this first segment. Now that you've had a chance to sit back and reset and look at the film, what do you give overall grade?
Well, it's tough. We had a number of guys probably play too many plays. We didn't do a good job of, creating the depth and, trying to get some guys in there and get them some spells. We've got to be able to do that. I think my granddad would have been all over me about that because, he always was big on playing, a number of players, but half of our team is sophomores and freshmen. you know, and getting those in a game like that, it's tough, you know, and where do you plug those guys in there? And where's there a situation that's right to get a young guy in there? You put a young corner in there, you know, and Jack and those guys are playing really well. You put a young lineman in there, it's tough, you know, but, you know, I mean, the way our grit, our tenacity, our toughness, you know, there's obviously plays we would like to have back, but, you know, the way that we were able to dig in that game, I mean, we could have easily been run out of there. But our guys dug deep and they made it a football game. That just really shows what we're capable of. But, you know, when you ask a coach, there's always tons of improvement, you know, not just from the player side, but as a coach's side. You know, our job's put them in situations where they can be successful and make plays. At times we did that, at times we didn't. And so, you know, we just got to do a better job of making sure that we continue to get better throughout the season.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we'll look for the first half of the Science Hill recap. We come back, we'll preview tonight's contest as we go back to the Stone Castle. First time in about 9 years we've been there. All that to come right after these words from our sponsors. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coach Shawn Witten Show. Coach, as I alluded to earlier, we haven't played Tennessee High since 2018. The last time we was there was 2017. We had played them every year up until 2018. So a lot of these young pups have never been there on a Friday night. What do you look forward to? They got a brand new staff with one or two holdovers from the previous regime. What do you look for this Tennessee High defense to come against our offense?
Well, I mean, when you play Tennessee High, I mean, honestly, it's a 5A school. It's one of the tougher schools on our teams on our schedule. We just know that, you know, that they're always very disciplined, very good at the trenches. And, you know, they've always, you know, got big guys. You know, when I think about Bristol, I think about, you know, the trenches is where they've been able to win. Great history, great tradition, and a disappointing loss last week. You know, they themselves are playing a tough schedule. You know, I think that anytime you've not played in 9 years, you know, this one's got a, you know, this one's got a big fat red Sharpie circle around it, you know, and they want to beat us bad, I would think. And so, you know, just you got to shift the focus. You know, you got to get the focus back. You got to try to pick up the tendencies again. You know, I don't know if I know a player, you know, on Tennessee High, because we haven't played them so long. You don't really keep up with the roster. You don't really keep up with them through the season. So, you know, you just got to refocus. You know, try to do as much research on the team as well. Get that information out to the team, and then. You just got to find a way to regroup. You know, it's going to be a tough game. You know, they're a run-first football team. They always play good defense. You know, typically have, and so you know we got to regroup and make sure that we respect our opponent.
What kind of style of defense do you expect them to come against? Do you expect them to be a mirror or similar to what we've seen last?
Well, they're pretty physical. I mean, very good defensively. You know, they got 2 stud inside linebackers that play pretty tight to the ball. Their stud linebackers are also the running backs. Just, you know, traditionally, they're a well-coached team. You know, they have run the football a lot, you know, the last couple of years. They even jumped into some wildcat opportunities. They're playing 2 quarterbacks right now. You know, you're talking about a version, a little bit of smash mouth football. You know, maybe not a ton of speed, but a lot of inside zone, a lot of inside runs. You know, they're going to kind of ground and pound to say, and that's what they've done. You know, maybe even a little bit of wildcat, maybe even a little bit of single wing. You know, so a lot of jet sweeps and things like that kind of throw you off. So, you know, a week ago they had a number of turnovers. You know, with the weather that we had, you know, they had pouring down rain. You know, had terrible field position, fumble the ball several times, and, you know, it was probably, not like Tennessee High football, so I'm sure they're going to be eager to get back, ready to go tonight.
What do you want to establish? I know you want to establish, but what is your main goal going into tonight's?
Well, we got to be a little bit more balanced than we were, you know, and for us, if we can get properly aligned on defense, and we can tackle, we can stay in this football game. You know, Science Hill made it tough on us, the backs that they had, you know, putting the ball on the perimeter. We just didn't make enough plays there. And then, you know, tonight, I think you're going to get a lot of similarities where, you know, the best people are going to be on both sides of the field. You know, so the team that can, keep their composure. The team that can wear down the other team, quicker to say, is a team that's going to have the advantage. And so I thought Science did a good job. Number of defenses we played on, snaps we played on defense. It was hard to flip back over, and then where does the big plays come from when you're kind of gassed, and then when your D linemen are flipping back over to play O-line. Do they have enough push to get a run started? Can they pass protect to give Rhett time? So there's a number of things to go with that, but we definitely want to leave this game tonight having more plays offensively than they do. We want to take care of the ball. We want to create first downs. We want to possess the ball. Make them have to continue to line up, and make them have to really force their hand on defense. When you do that, then it really limits them what they can do offensively.
Football is it's a game of adjustments. Is there an adjustment that made last week that you said that may be what we need to look at going forward?
Well, I think maybe it was first game jitters or first game nerves. I think once the lightning delay came, it allowed us to catch our breath and regroup. And it was like, hey, man, we've this is what we prepared for. This is what we worked so hard for. We just kind of got the guys to kind of calm down a little bit, focus on execution, and make sure they're communicating defensively there. But we just got to do a good job, a better job, or make sure that our communication is clear, our responsibilities are concise, that we're making decisive decisions and trusting our instincts and playing defense with our eyes, making sure that we're getting the proper reads. And then, we've got to do a better job of making sure when our subs get in there, and we got to give those guys a break, that they got to be on point, And I think there's a little bit of lapse of that Friday when we did sometimes. We just didn't quite look the same that we normally do when we got the other guys in there. So our depth's got to really grow up. It's got to really mature. In order for us to make sure that we can finish in the fourth quarter.
It's old men like me and older people like you. This Tennessee High was always the first game.
Yeah.
This was the game out of the gate for a number of years. So we knew Tennessee High well, and even back then, as Ryan said, it's a slobber knocker. It is. They want to hit you hard. Sometimes hit you hard after the whistle. How do you get the team? And I think you said it best during our first segment. I don't know of many ball games other than maybe a Greenville one a couple of years ago where every single play you were tense. Yeah. Every single play you were like, we got to have this one. We got to have this one. How do you channel that same type of urgency into a team that we would play over there? By the time you graduated high school, we had played at the Stone Castle, God forbid that place, 6 or 8 times between the different sports. How do you let this bunch know? We got to kind of treat them the same because they are the same.
Yeah. Well, it becomes with this bunch, it's obviously next play mentality. It's obviously respect your opponent, move on to the next. But I think there's a there's a responsibility for us, to make sure that guys understand that it's their job to do their job, and it's star in your role, and if we play better defense, the more opportunities we're going to get offense, and I think a little bit of sometimes, when we're trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, we forget to focus on what I'm supposed to do, and so it's just narrowing that focus. It's blocking out that noise. It's getting back to work and attention to detail of, Tuesday's a work day, Wednesday's a work day. Slowly putting the game plan in to where we can be better, and those are the small things. It's focusing on the details, the small things that go to the big plays, and it's, understanding tendencies, they're going to do this when they go in this formation. They're going to do that, and it's up to us, at times on offense to make sure that we're breaking those tendencies, so people don't do those things. So, they provide some difficulty for us because they're a strong opponent. Both teams have tough schedules lie ahead. This is a must-win game for both teams. And, for them to open up the season in Stone Castle in a game that's not been played in 9 years, you got to make sure that we're going to match their energy their enthusiasm, and then, you know, we've got to make sure that in games like these, and games like Friday night, it's whatever it takes to win. It doesn't matter if it's defense, run game, pass game, you know, whatever it may be. You know, it could be whichever running back's got the hot hand or whatever we've got to do. You know, that's what we've got to make sure we're ready for. And so, you know, I think the guys have done a good job. I mean, I'm sure we're eager to get back on the field tonight and show what we can do. And then, you know, I think it's always great from a coaching standpoint. You know, this is a little bit like playing a playoff game. You know, it's playing a Knox Fulton we haven't played in school history. You know, for us, this is uncommon territory for us, and so you know, we're probably going in with an underdog mentality. We've got to get over there and, you know, make sure we take the crowd out of it. We've got to make plays. We've got to find a way to get up on these guys and not allow them to hang around. And so there's a lot of things that go in to a game like this, especially coming off a disappointing loss to Science Hill.
You'll be happy to know when we talked to Braden Rainwater and Red Slagle, we asked him about what did you do during that almost hour lightning delay at Science Hill, and almost to a T they talked about, hey, assignment football, do your job, don't try to do too much. How hard is that to teach kids as much as you've pounded that in their head? You know, that defensive back or that outside linebacker, when they see them going in the middle, you know, they don't do contain. They want to get in there and get a piece of it. Or when a lineman sees the ball go the other way and they don't stay there for the cutback. And they're young kids we're talking about. Right. Everybody wants to be on a tackle. How hard is it as a coach to say, look, you've got to play your assignment till the whistle?
Well, the best way is obviously film study, you know, and you know what you put out on film. There's so many lessons you can learn and teach. You know, it's sometimes it's not when you win games, you know, you don't learn as much, but when you lose, you learn so much about yourself, the things that you could have done, or things that the positions we were in, and then, you know, you talk about the 2 first downs, you know, balls being pushed inside, you know, we run inside, it bounces to the outside, you know, there's small things, but film study and allow them to see it. It's like teaching a safety, you know, to get back. Sooner or later, he's got to get burned in order for him to teach a lesson. He's got to stay back. So, you know, there's small lessons. I think our guys are mature enough and have grown up enough that, you know, we've got to make those corrections. And you win the games on Friday, you know, Monday through Thursday. I thought we've had a great week, but that's ultimately the key for us is film study. It's you know, being the coaching tips, the tips and reminders, allowing those guys to see it. You know, how do you learn from it? And you know, hopefully we'll do a better job tonight on that.
Sound like Pat.
Yeah, for sure.
Learn more from a loss than you do from a win. Coach Witten, as always, we thank you very much. Good luck tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the Coach Shawn Witten Show. We'll hear a word from our sponsors here on WBJ when we come back. Tony and I will have the opening kickoff for big contest tonight as the Cyclones, for the first time in almost a decade, travel to Bristol to face the Tennessee Vikings in the Stone Castle. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.